Hello, welcome back. Another video from Hudson Bonsai. Today I've got another beautiful tree that was gifted to me. This was removed from a landscape for reasons that you can probably see. It's not a overly attractive landscape plant, but I think that it's going to make a pretty fantastic bonsai. I will bring it a little closer, but this thing has a quite massive trunk on it and a good spread of roots. A lot of this dirt that you see, I'm not even sure. I think most of that root mass is from this bush. I think it was actually kind of planted like that. If I didn't mention, this is a Taxus or a U. I'm not exactly sure what variety, but it really doesn't matter. But to me anyway. So today I'm going to just kind of prune those roots back a bit and get this thing into a large nursery container just to allow it to kind of grow and recover. I really won't do any pruning even of this dead. There's really not a reason for me to take it off. And at the appropriate time, I'll prune this back. You know, I imagine this is going to come back somewhere into here, and then I'll begin to grow my tree from there. I don't know really. Maybe when it gets into a pile, I'll decide I want some of these taller trunks. But all I know is I'm going to cut this way back. I'm just not going to do that today. Today all I'm going to do is focus on getting it into a pot and keeping it alive through the fall and winter. And you know, I don't even know how much work this will get. You know, this thing may, if it grows really well next year, maybe I will do some work on it. But it also may just sit in that container for the next few years until I think that it's actually healthy enough to be worked on. But the parts of this tree that are growing do actually appear to be growing, you know, pretty well. I assume it's lost a significant amount of its root mass, so maybe that vigor won't continue, but at the moment, even though it's not very nice looking overall, it does seem fairly healthy to me, and there's a fair amount of root mass there. So I have high hopes for success with this tree. So hopefully you can see a little better now the you know, just the size of this trunk down here, and I think that there's going to be a nice nabari there. I don't want to remove any more soil. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, I'll find that out in a few years when I go to repot this. But this is really the part of this thing that I think makes it have a lot of potential to be a really nice tree eventually. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just, there's some really big structural roots in here that I'm definitely going to need the loppers for, but there's no fibrous root on there, and it's really just going to prevent me from getting it into the size pot that I would like to get it into. Yeah, and even though those are very large woody roots, there's no functioning root on there. That one has a few. Nope, that's not even attached to that piece. So it's really not going to do anything for me when it's in the pot, except take up room that could be soil. Another one back here. Again, it's just wood. few more there. At the moment, that's what this tree is actually standing on. I have to be a little strategic here. That's one I don't need. It's quite a large one, or a long one anyway. Coming out of the back here. Right here. If those roots are indeed alive, which I assume they are at the moment, they'll just sprout new fibrous roots from further back where I cut instead of that original cut. So I'm really not risking anything by removing them. That's not attached to anything. You can see some of the native soil left down there, just clay, sandy clay. But that's right there is wood. I'm thinking that this area down here is actually the nabari, and a lot of this that looks like soil mass on the top here, where there is some fine root, eventually I will be eliminating in favor of these larger roots that are down here towards the bottom. There's a few, no, there's really no large structural roots sticking out of that soil mass all the way around. The main flare is down here, and it's at the base of the trunk down in here. I would say that's at least 6 inches. So there may be a slight inverse taper here, but if this is a clump, that's okay, because that's where the branches are. But it is a very nice piece of material with a lot of potential, I think. Alright, so this is the pot that I'm hoping to fit it in. This is a large pot. I don't know what this is, 5-gallon pot. It's got holes drilled all in it, which is good for aeration of the soil. I do this a lot with larger pots. I just, especially with conifers, I think it helps with drainage. It helps with getting oxygen into the soil. It's just a good thing in my opinion. Potting this in, same thing I usually pot trees like this in, which is just a mixture of spent potting mix or used potting mix that's been, kind of sifted and cleaned out, and some fresh potting mix, and also some aggregate to help again with drainage and aeration. So because of the way this branch structure is, I would normally like to pot these very close to the bottom of the pot, but I am going to be limited on how deep I can actually fit this in this pot, and I don't have any shallower containers at the moment that have enough circumference for this tree. So I'm just going to have to fill it a little bit higher than I normally would. just a temporary container, just a recovery container. The next time this tree is potted, or repotted, I'll try to pot it into something that's very close to the ideal size for the tree, or very close to, you know, the size pot that I want it to end up in eventually. And you know, then I'll introduce some bonsai soil. Sitting down on that soil pretty good now. That's also not what I imagine the final angle of this tree will be. I think it'll be more, right now I'm kind of facing what I see as the front at the moment, and I want to tilt it back more towards me, but I want to get all of that root mass that was there into the soil. Like I said, I don't think that in the long term I'll end up keeping all that root mass. I think the next time I pot this and I do root pruning, that's where most of the root mass that I take off will be. It's from a lot of that root mass that's above what I think the actual root base should be, because there's a much nicer set of roots a few inches deeper, and all those fine roots are just the roots that were growing at the very surface of where this was planted. This was planted in the ground. I imagine it was probably, if not landscape fabric, at least mulch, and a lot of those roots were probably existing in that mulch, and that's why there's, you know, you can see that sandy clay soil in the deeper roots where that portion of it was actually growing in the hole that was dug and it was planted in. But for now, those fine roots that are actually there should, you know, serve pretty well to keep this tree alive. And really the size of this pot is what's keeping me from, there's no reason why I couldn't pot this into pumice or even, you know, like a 1-1 mix. But the cost of filling a pot like that makes it unrealistic to do so. At least for me.
kind of work the soil down through the roots. I can tell by all the holes that are drilled in the pot that the pot itself is definitely full of soil. Just trying to make sure that it's gotten in, around, and under all those existing roots there. Still see a bit of a hollow spot. That's looking pretty good to me. Again, you can't see the base of the trunk, but I imagine in the end it'll be planted at an angle more like that, with that being the front. But for now, I'm going to give this a good thorough watering, and then I'll move it out into the grow out area in the garden, and hopefully it recovers well. And there is some budding lower down in here, but now that this thing will be out in the open in the sun, and it'll have, you know, a good healthy root system, it should bud out all over the place. And you know, hopefully in spring, summer next year I'll be able to begin starting to reduce this back a bit. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.